Hi everyone, I hope everyone is safe and sound. Our talk for today is about application architecture from hackers' perspective. Today's roadmap for our talk is what is application architecture, why security architecture is important, what is security analysis, why application architecture review should be taken care of when developing an application. Now, what is application architecture? The principles and procedures used to design and create an application are referred to as application architecture. When designing an application, the architecture provides a roadmap and best practices to follow that you end up with a well-structured application. Software design patterns can assist you in the development of an application. Now, what is a pattern? A pattern is a repeatable solution to a problem. To create more general application architectures, patterns can be linked together. Instead of totally designing the architecture from scratch, you may leverage pre-existing design patterns to ensure that everything works as it should. There will be front end and back end services in an application architecture. Front end development is focused with the application's user experience, while the back end development is concerned with giving access to applications, data, services, and other existing systems that are available. The architecture serves as a starting point or roadmap for developing an application, but you will have to make implementations decisions that aren't covered by the design. For example, choosing an application programming language in which the application should be developed is the first step. For software development, a variety of programming languages are available. Certain programming languages can be used to create specific sorts of applications. For example, Java is widely used for developing Android applications. There are a number of application architectures available, but that is beyond the scope of this talk. I will do briefly explain about the three-tier architecture, which is quite popular and is used widely. A well-known software application architecture that organizes applications is the three-tier architecture. The name also points that it has three tiers, which includes presentation tier that we users see and interact within the browser, while there is a popular tier while there is an application tier, or also known as logic tier, where the application server or the web server core business processes are defined and data is processed accordingly, and how various components interact with each other. In the third one is the data tier, where the data associated with the application is stored and managed. Each application tier has its own benefits that all depends on your needs and how you utilize them. The logical and the physical separation of functions is the main advantage of three-tier design. Each layer can run on its own server platform and operating system. For example, there is a web server and the application server or the database server. So each tier also runs on at least one dedicated or virtual server, allowing each layer services to be changed and optimized without affecting the other tiers. So it has also benefits there are benefits of three-tier architecture as compared to the single or the double two-tier architectures. For example, there is a faster development. That means that each tier can be developed separately or simultaneously by different teams. It has improved reliability. An outage in one layer is less likely to affect the other levels availability or layers availability or performance, and it has scalability. That means that any tier can be scaled or upgraded independently as of need, and also it has the improved security. For example, the presentation tier and the data tier cannot communicate directly. There is application tier between the presentation and the data tier, so both of them cannot interact directly with each other. That means that application tier is acting as an internal firewall between the presentation and the data tier. Okay, why security architecture is important? Do we need to take care of it? Well, software architects put a lot of efforts while considering application architectures for their businesses. It is really, very important at the same time to examine the security issues that might arise during or after the product is developed. Considering information security while creating architecture for your product enables you to achieve core business objectives. This will help you to make your business processes more transparent and accountable, such that no interruption would be observed. One of the most important thing is to make your business more secure. This way you will bring down the security incidents and breaches to very least, and of course you will make your business and processes complying to the national and international regulations and security standards. And of course the IT team and the security investigators would collaborate more efficiently, and at the meantime the security posture of your organization would be more I think clearer than before. Each year, information security service providers share their threat intelligence reports. Verizon is one of the leading service provider in them. They have shared their 2021 data breach investigation report that describes that 80% of the attacks are related to web applications, along with system intrusions and other various errors resulting in the security incidents. So how do we anticipate the web applications we are using on daily basis aren't fallen to cyber incidents, and the data of people they might have saved on their data stores isn't breached? So on a serious note, software architects and the developers need to focus heavily on building the products for different businesses. That is when the application analysis come into play, so that the security guys and the developers should think of the necessary security controls if they have left unintentionally during the building of a product or like somewhere. The concerned team needs to find out. So it is very important to analyze the application and find the security weaknesses before taking the product to live production environment, where it should be freely available to the people, including the bad guys who might leverage the security vulnerabilities left behind in the product somewhere that are that if they are fortunate to find out. So such activities can result in reputational loss, as the customers of the particular business can doubt on the intentions and mistrust the product. So according to the statistics available over the internet, it is found that 50% of the security issues that are found during various security assessments by internal or external teams are related to code defects that are primarily discovered while when analyzing the product through the static assessment. So you see here different steps of software development life cycle that are mapped against the security development life cycle stages or steps. There is a risk assessment activity in security development life cycle, which is a process to identify the security hazards that is carried out during compiling requirements for the product. And in the design phase, potential security threats are identified in the threat modeling phase. Whereas during the development, the penetration testing team conducts the static analysis and the code reviews through manual and automated approach. Whereas during user acceptance testing, which is known as UAT, manual testing of the application is done to ensure no security loopholes are left behind. After the UAT, the product is taken to production environment, where the dynamic analysis of the product is happen to discover if the data isn't leaked and everything is working perfectly secure as intended. Along with this, they inspect if the configurations that they have done are flawless and couldn't be leveraged for malicious purposes. As of now, I have discussed application architecture, an example of application architecture, why security architecture is important, a data breach investigation report, and common hackways of web applications, together with some statistics, a working comparison of software development life cycle and security development life cycle, and how different activities are managed and teams collaborate simultaneously. So now it's time to explore the key areas of application where security immensely needs to be incorporated. Following are some of the areas listed below, which we will discuss in detail. Let's move forward to application architecture, documents, and design. So the name sounds quite descriptive, but this area needs to be handled very seriously. That is, if the security controls or the roles of the users, the privileges, the business processes with respect to information security are defined correctly, I believe the developers would do a great job to restrict or hinder the security breaches. So what needs to be done is that the application design review practices should be defined. The components should be identified. A high level architecture for the application within the workflow diagram of application should be produced. Verified that the application components are defined in terms of business functions and also security functions they provide. So in the last but not the least, security features should be addressed in the documents, which will help the developers and the security guys to investigate or to find what security controls are initially implemented in the product. So there comes threat modeling. In order to think like a hacker who actually finds the security weaknesses in the critical assets of an organization, we also need to follow the footsteps or the approach and investigate about the possible potential security vulnerabilities that might be leveraged at any stage by the hackers. So there comes threat modeling, which identifies the many forms of threat agents that can affect a computer application or system. So we need to put ourselves in the shoes of a hacker to see how much harm we could possibly cause. Of course, we will be doing it ethically. That means that we have to carry out these activities with the permissions of the management, and should bring this to the notice of the higher management for finding the security vulnerabilities and conducting these kind of activities before the hackers do. So therefore, organization make a detailed investigation of the software architecture, the business environment, while conducting threat modeling. So it's typically done at the design stage, but I think it can be happen at any stage of a new application to assist developers in identifying the security vulnerabilities and sharing those security vulnerabilities with the developers in order to fix them at the earliest. This activity will help us to verify that the threat model for the target application has been produced and covers of risk associated with spoofing, tampering, repudiation, information disclosure, denial of service, and elevation of the privileges. Deployment and infrastructure consideration. This area discusses the development and deployment environment, the operating systems, the user handling the complete infrastructure. So with respect to rolling the information security in this field, we need to figure out what restrictions does the infrastructure security impose and how to work around. What security protocols are addressed, how things are communicating, are the system updated against the public disclosed vulnerabilities, and when was the security updates installed on the system, who has the authority to interact with the machines. Input validation. The application must ensure that only logically valid data can be entered at the front end as well as directly to the server side of application of a system. What hackers do is they abuse the security controls implemented on the front end, also known as the client side, for ease and saving time to take application into the production. What developers do is that they only put weekend security checks on the client side. So in return, the hackers bypasses the client side security controls and do whatever the use case they have in their mind for leveraging the weakness and gaining personal benefit. So this is why the penetration testing activities are conducted by the large organizations in order to find the weaknesses, because they cannot bear the loss. For example, in case of e-commerce website, hackers can temper the price or the quantity of the product while buying products. So this should be handled acutely. Since I am running out of time, I have to quickly walk over the slides and conclude within given time. Okay, so the difference between the two is that authentication is the process of verifying that a user is who really claim to be, whereas authorization involves verifying whether a user is allowed to do something. The impact of authentication vulnerabilities can be very severe. Once an attacker has either bypassed authentication or has brute forced into a user's account, they have access to all the data and the functionality that the compromised account has. So if they are capable of compromising a high level, high privileged account such as system administrator, they could take control of the entire system and potentially gain access to the internal infrastructure. Even compromising a low privilege account might give them a lot of information. Session management. In most of the online applications, the session management method is critical. It's a critical security component. Session management techniques are a popular target for malicious attacks against the application because of their critical functionality. So if an attacker can breach in application session management, they can effectively bypass the application authentication protections and impersonate as another user without knowing their credentials. So if an attacker gains control of administrator user in this method, in this way the attacker will have the complete control over the application. Access control or authorization is the restriction on who can conduct a particular activities or access resources. Since we have discussed authentication and session management, access control is heavily dependent on them. So hackers commonly abuse access control implementations in order to elevate their privileges. I have just pointed out that they access control or authorization is the restriction on who can conduct particular activities or access resources. Since we have discussed the authentication and session management, access control is dependent on them. Hackers commonly abuse access control implementation in order to elevate their privileges. I will just point out that there is horizontal and vertical privilege escalation which hackers obtain for carrying out malicious activities. So developer needs to put role-based segregation such that sensitive information should be accessible to authorized users only. Here we have configuration management. Infrastructure team needs to implement patch management practices and follow the security policies that should be developed in the application architecture documents and design. Make sure that the security controls, for example encryption on communication, is in use and the application components are up to date. Cryptography is used in order to protect the sensitive information from being exposed to unauthorized people. But hackers still tend to bypass this in a way that weakened procedures are implemented. For example, most of the times developers hardcode the cryptographic keys in the source code. In the case of Android applications, they hardcode the cryptographic keys in the source code. Exception handling. Improper handling, error handling can cause a range of security issues for a website. The most typical issue is when the user sees a comprehensive internal error message, such as error codes, stack traces, database dumps, exposing the user names or any sort of sensitive information. These notifications expose facts about the implementation that should never be revealed. Such facts might provide hackers valuable information about the site's possible weaknesses. Auditing and logging. This helps a lot in incident response when a security incident occurs. Each suspicious activity is recorded and provides juicy information while tracking the incident. So this is why the hackers have to mask their IPs while conducting the malicious activities. Make sure that unauthorized users do not have access to these critical systems. Thank you everyone. Please drop your questions. I will do my best to answer them.